Mr. Hancher, we greatly appreciate your taking time from your busy schedule on the eve of your departure from the university to talk with us a bit about your years at the university as a student and as an administrative official. How long have you been associated with the university, Mr. Hancher?
Just a few months, less than 50 years.
When did you come as a student?
I came to the university in September 1914, just after the outbreak of World War I.
Your hometown was in Iowa.
Yes, I lived in Rolfe, Iowa, where my parents had lived and where my ancestors had lived since the Civil War.
Wonder if you'd tell us what made you pick SUI.
I came to SUI largely through the influence of a teacher of Latin in the high school. She was a graduate of the university, and she told me about its qualities and gave me every reason in the world to come here.
Had you considered some other schools as possibilities?
In a vague kind of way, but actually I never seriously considered any institution except the university.
What was the university like when you first came here?
Well, to begin with, it was all of it on the east side of the river, and most of it was east of Madison Street, which runs in front of the Memorial Union. It was a small university. It had a year-round enrollment of under 3,000, which meant that in the fall of 1914, when I came here, it must have had substantially less than 2,500 students.
Is that right?
We now, it's impossible to get the figures by semesters in those early years. Of course, now we select a September or October date for comparative purposes from year to year. And of course, we were well over 12,000 last year, and we'll be over 13,000 this coming fall. But at that time, they had a consolidated enrollment of both semesters and summer session, and you have to guess at what the fall enrollment was.
But less than 3,000.
Well, less than 2,500, I would say. Yes.
Do you remember where your classes were?
Yes, my first class in German, my first year class in German was in the southeast corner of Schaefer Hall. My class in English composition was in the northwest corner of this is the ground floor of Schaefer Hall. My history class was on the second floor of Schaefer in the southwest corner, and my physics, of course, was taken in Physics Hall.
So you didn't have very far to go between classes?
Not very far, no.
I remember I had a class years ago in East Hall, and then the next class across the river in Psychopathic Hospital, and it took some running to get over there in 10 minutes between classes.
Well, we didn't face that because we had no buildings on the west side of the river at that time.
Did you live in a dormitory?
No, there was no men's dormitory when I came to school. The men lived in fraternities or in private houses, and my first year was spent at 403 North Lynn Street.
403 North Lynn. Then you didn't have too far to come to classes. What was your major field, Mr. Hancher?
I majored in political science under Benjamin Shambaugh and with John Briggs and Jay Vanderzee and a number of people famous in our early history.
Are any of the people who were here then still here?
Well, of course, Fred Higbee was here, but I don't think I knew him my freshman year. I think he was an acquaintance that came later because I was not in engineering. I've been trying to think about the early people, and the ones that I remember most vividly, the ones I had most closest contact with, are all gone.
When did you get your bachelor's degree then?
I took it in a straight 4-year period and finished up in the spring of 1918, which was a pretty harrowing time to be going to school because it was the time of the great breakthrough on the Western Front, and all of us knew we'd be, or thought we'd be in service presently, and it was a little disconcerting.
Yeah, I'll bet it was. You were a Rhodes Scholar, weren't you, after that?
Yes. After the war, I came back and started my first year of law, and in the fall of that year, I applied for a Rhodes Scholarship and was appointed in December, and got postponed to the following October so that I could finish my first year of law here before entering Oxford.
And then you went to Oxford. What did you study over there?
Well, I studied in the School of Jurisprudence, which is a little more theoretical and a little less practical than the law courses here.
Did you get a degree then from Oxford?
Yes, I have a B.A. in jurisprudence.
How would you assess the value of this period of training at Oxford in England in terms of your own career and background?
Well, I think it was extremely valuable to me, more so in my years as president than in my years as a lawyer. I valued the experience of going through the Oxford School of Jurisprudence, but the valuable thing about it from an educational point of view was that it pointed out to me that people could achieve an education in two methods almost diametrically opposed to each other. Our American method, which registered for classes in a wide variety of subjects with fairly regular class attendance, with credits picked up course by course, and finally cumulatively moving to a degree. At Oxford, on the other hand, it was so loose and chaotic, apparently, that it was very difficult for an American, even with a BA degree, to adjust to it, because the only required thing was one tutorial a week. And beyond that, you could go to lectures or not, you could read or not, you could read when you wanted to, or concentrate at periods and then loaf for extended periods. The only thing was the preparation of the tutorial and the attendance at the tutorial hour.
Sounds a little like only good, dedicated students could survive that kind of system.
Well, you certainly can sink very easily, and it took me about a term to realize that nobody there was very much concerned about my future except me, and that I'd better be getting on with the job.
And I guess that was calculated to make you feel that way.
Exactly. Their whole scheme is to encourage independent study and self-development.
Did you have a chance to do any traveling in England and in Europe while you were there?
Yes. Oxford in those days was very much a gentleman's school, and of course the terms were only 8 weeks long, and there were only 3 of them. And there was a 6 weeks interval at Christmas and a 6 weeks interval at Easter, and a vacation in the summer. So that the first vacation we spent in Paris and in the battle front, the second in southern France, the Riviera, and Italy. The third, I came home between my 2 years. The third vacation at Christmas time we spent in Germany and the Netherlands. The fourth, we went to the coast of Brittany and studied in preparation for our examinations. And then the summer, I traveled through Germany and Austria, Hungary, Switzerland, France, and back to England and home.
Don't many British students traditionally take a year for travel on the continent after they get their degrees?
Well, I don't know whether this is as much in vogue in the days when I was there as it had been in the 19th century. That it was very common in the 19th century to do that, particularly if you were a member of a rich, well-to-do family.
Did you then return to the University of Iowa and pick up your law training?
Yes, I came back to Iowa City in the fall of 1922 and finished my law school work by taking the 2 additional years I had still waiting.
Who were some of your professors in the College of Law?
Well, in my freshman year, I had Professor McGovney and Professor Perkins, Professor Goodrich, Professor Bordwell, Professor Horak, I think, Claude Horak. Well,
Horak is the only name I remember.
Yes.
When I first came in 31, I knew some of the people that you knew in those days. Did you live in a dormitory then when you came back? Or?
No, I lived in a fraternity house. I had joined the Sigma Nu fraternity and lived part of the time there and part of the time in the Phi Alpha Delta house.
Where were the law classes held? Were they in Schaefer Hall too?
No, they were Gilmore Hall, as it's called now. Was the college, was the law college building, and all of my classes were there, with the library on the top floor, of course. So it was a self-contained operation.
See. What did you do after you got your law degree?
After my law degree, I went to Chicago and practiced law for 16 years.
What did you specialize in as a lawyer? Were you with one firm, or did you move to several positions?
No, I've only, of course, the firm changed from time to time, but it was still the same firm in one sense. I mean, new partners came in and old partners dropped out. But I've only had two employers in my life, or two business connections. One was a law firm in Chicago, and the other is the university here.
Mhm.
And so it's a little odd for me, as it was last fall, to be looking for a job.
That's right. You haven't had much experience
No,
hunting for
I'm
jobs.
not a professional job hunter.
Did you live in Chicago?
We lived, most of the time I lived in Evanston. I did live in Chicago the first, with 2 winters when I was unmarried, and 2 winters after we were married. We had a house on East Lake Terrace, which is the extreme north end of Chicago, but the rest of the time I lived in Evanston.
Well, when did the call come to you to return to the university as president?
Well, negotiations, or at least approaches to this, came in January or February of 1940. It was understood that President Gilmore would retire on July 1st, 1940, and they began searching for someone to succeed him, and I was approached early in the year.
Was this a difficult decision for you to make?
Well, it was difficult, enough so that in February of 1940, I asked them to take my name off the list.
Oh, you did?
Yes, and it was not back on the list until late summer of 1940.
What caused you to change your mind?
Well, I became convinced that the best place to search for a university president was among faculty or administrators who had had internal experience with universities and knew, well, to use a cliche, who'd gone through the chairs, you might say.
That's why you asked your name to be taken off the list.
Yes, I felt that they had not exhausted the search, or that they had settled or were looking in my direction too quickly. They should exhaust the field.
But they came back to you again, and this
Yes.
time you were persuaded.
Yes,
And
I'd
that
been
was-
thinking about it a good deal in the interval, of course.
Yeah. Well, that was our good fortune. I guess SUI has changed considerably in the 24 years since you became president back in 1940.
Enormously, both in student enrollment. We've gone up many, many times. In faculty, I don't recall the number of faculty when I first came. I was looking at the comparative budgets of the colleges, that is the educational, what you might call the educational side of the university, the teaching and research side of the university, just yesterday. And our initial budget has now been increased 7-fold.
Is that right?
From 1940-41 to 1964-65.
And a lot of other things have happened. We get more outside support now.
Oh, yes.
Money from federal agencies and foundations.
Seems to me all of our outside money put together the first year I was here was less than $100,000.
Yes, and now it's
in
over.
about 8 million.
Yeah,
something
that's
like
what I thought.
Yeah.
7-8 million.
Yes.
And of course, we have many more buildings now
Yes.
than we had then.
Although we had a long dry spell when other institutions were building, and we needed building badly, but we got a rather delayed start, but we're doing pretty well at the moment.
I think we are. Mr. Hancher, what were some of the highlights of your years as president as you see it? I mean, some of the satisfactions, the achievements of your presidency as you would view them.
Well, I would think that one of the greatest satisfactions of living in a university community is the satisfaction of seeing in a tenure as long as mine, as seeing young people come to the university, achieve maturity and distinction, and go out and take an important place in the world. Just the other day, I had a letter from a man in this university who was present on the first induction day to which I spoke. He is now the head of one of the major departments in the College of Medicine, and is achieving a very distinguished place in his profession from a national point of view. Well, this is a very rewarding thing. Another thing that I find extremely satisfying, and my wife has over the years, has been the association with the wide variety of people who are competent in so many fields. A university is an exciting place to live because you may sit beside a geologist at one dinner, and an anatomist at the next, and an historian the third, and so on. There's almost no limit to the range of knowledge and expertness in a community of this kind.
It's a stimulating kind of life.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
And there are always enough young people around to keep you young.
That's true. And then because the faculty changes and the student body changes, you have the opportunity over the years of meeting so many people,
This
so
is
many
true.
of these fine people. What about the various honors that you have received over the years, Mr. Hancher? These give you great personal satisfaction, I would think.
Yes, I've greatly enjoyed some of them. I was pleased to be chairman of the American Council on Education. I enjoyed my 4 years on the Educational Policies Committee, one of which I spent as chairman, my presidency of the Association of American Universities, which is composed of 41 of the most select universities in the United States and Canada. All of these, of course, have brought me in contact with educational people who had a great deal to contribute to my knowledge and understanding of educational problems, and who in themselves are extremely personable and pleasant people to meet and to know.
Mhm. This kind of assignment takes a great deal of time, doesn't it?
Yes, but I think it's worth it. I think possibly I justified it on the ground that I didn't play golf and I didn't spend a lot of time in other things, so that I did have this outside time as a kind of time for avocations of that sort. One of the greatest things that's happened to my wife and me has been the opportunity to be acquainted with the people in the Association of the Universities of the British Commonwealth and the United Kingdom Vice Chancellors. And in over a 10-year period, we were privileged to attend. I was privileged, and my wife, to accompany me to 5 of these international meetings, where there are some people that I will see again when I go to India, which, of course, send its representatives to this Commonwealth Association.
And you've also done a great deal of traveling in this country, haven't you?
Yes, although not as much, I suppose, as many others, but I have been in most parts of the United States.
Didn't United Airlines give you some years ago a 100,000-mile button? And
Yes, and it would be very small mileage compared with the miles I've covered since.
I would imagine so.
Yes.
Have you enjoyed living in Iowa City, in a town this size?
Oh, yes. I think, as a matter of fact, that a town the size of Iowa City offers you more opportunity to meet and know your colleagues in the university than an urban university would. There, the people are inclined to live some miles from the university and commute, travel back and forth. It's pretty difficult to establish intimate relations with them.
We've been talking about the personal side of your years at Iowa. What about the business side, as it were, the university side?
Well, of course, I'm astonished as I look about the university to see the fields of knowledge that we now cover that we didn't cover when I first came. The whole field of nuclear physics and of space physics has been expanded many times if it was even dreamt of when I came. And this is true in the biological sciences and in many other ways. And of course the financial operations of the university now are quite fascinating in themselves, because our business office must account for about $60 million in transactions each year, and our combined budgets are about 50 million. And this means that we must have good financial officers as well as good academic professors and researchers and teachers.
So the curriculum has had to be strengthened, kept up to date over the years, and a proper administrative structure for handling the financial side of the university, which has grown considerably. And then the general administrative organization has been strengthened, has been changed over the years.
Yes, when I came here, Miss Hudson, Miss Mitchum, and I were all there was in Old Capitol for all practical purposes. There was no there were no coordinating officers of any kind, and there were about 35 deans, directors, and chairmen of important committees who reported directly to the president. Well, this was an impossible situation because they couldn't report. I couldn't see them often enough to make the situation intimate. And that's why we developed a pattern in which there are vice presidents, who or deans of large areas who have responsibilities for coordinating segments of the university, simply because the president no longer has time. There are problems that grow out of size that do tend to destroy the intimacy of the smaller institution, but I think people have adjusted to this and accepted it very well indeed.
Were there many problems connected with adapting the university to World War II and the period following the war?
Oh yes, they were pretty traumatic, although I've often reflected that they probably were less difficult for me than for some people in other universities, presidents of other universities, who, having spent 10 or 15 years of their lives to see a certain thing accomplished, saw it demolished overnight by the exodus of professors and students when the war came. This was not so difficult for me because I didn't have any vested interests to protect in any of these things. We adapted with the help of the people here very readily to change conditions, and they were drastically altered.
You've also had the problem, haven't you, of preparing the university for the great influx of students that we keep hearing about in the late 60s and early 70s.
It will be interesting to watch. I think it's highly unlikely that any president will have to face the rapid changes in enrollments and staffing and so on that we've had to face during my tenure of office, because when I came here we had under 6,700 students in the fall of 1940. 2.5 or 3 years later we had about 3,400 civilian students, and I've forgotten how many military students. Then when the war was over, we soared up to 10,886 about 1947 and 8. Then we sank back to 7,200 in 1952, and since then we've been moving gradually but at an accelerating pace up to a point where we're past 12,000 and will probably be past 13,000 next fall. Well, this in itself tells a story of very dramatic changes.
And of course, we don't dare wait until these hordes of students descend upon us. We have to be ready for them. You can't get ready this year for next year. And so you've had the planning ahead to do for these constant increases.
Yes.
And then there's been always the matter that college presidents always face of prodding to keep the quality of instruction high, the standards high, and in the face of difficulties, a world war and the veterans following the World War and the problems that were created by this influx, and then the federal aid picture, and in the face of all this, to keep standards high must be a constant concern.
Yes, it is, although I have found that normally, in the normal situation, if you don't get in the way of the faculty too much, they'll do that more or less automatically. Most of them have pretty high standards for themselves and for their colleagues, and they're continually, I think, working toward excellence in their own fields.
So one of the requirements of a good president is to stay out of the way of the faculty.
That's right, and to know when to interfere and when not. This is a very difficult thing to know.
I would think so. Mr. Hancher, I wonder if we could ask you to be a soothsayer for a minute here and talk about the future of the university as you see it. Well, what is the destiny of SUI?
Well, SUI has had a very phenomenal growth. I see no reason why it shouldn't have a continued growth, both in excellence and in range of interest, partly because I think I hope we've come to a breakthrough stage in the support of the state for the university, partly because there are many avenues of federal support now open to the university which were not open before, and partly because I think that our own alumni are being educated to know that, educated to the point where they understand that private giving can furnish the university many things which they cannot expect either through state or federal support or the gifts from great foundations. All of these, I think, are favorable factors. I don't mean to minimize the difficulties that will face President Bowen and those who remain here after July 1st. But I am very hopeful that we've had a breakthrough that will enable them to do things that were not possible in the last 23 years. Certainly, we know that there are important discoveries being made every day. We are fortunate in one respect that we have a medical school right in the heart of our university. We're not separated geographically, as they are in many universities where the medical school is in a different city. And we're not separated spiritually, I think, or emotionally. We're all a part of a community, and if it be true, as is often predicted, that the most spectacular advances in the next decades will be in the field of the biological sciences, this institution is extraordinarily fortunate.
Mm-hmm. You think we have the background to move ahead and overcome our difficulties and achieve our destiny?
This is true.
Mm-hmm. Could I ask you, Mr. Hancher, about your personal future? I noticed a moving van in front of your house as I drove by this noon.
Yes, this is true. We're trying to make these fatal decisions which have to be made after 24 years, what to discard and what to store and what to ship to India. Our sea freight is already gone, so the choices on India are pretty limited. But, of course, as you know, we are going to India for 2 years with the Ford Foundation in its Indian program. We expect to return in the late summer or autumn of 1966. My work there will be as an educational consultant at the university level, and will depend, of course, a good deal on the arrangements worked out between the Ford Foundation, the Indian government, and the Indian universities.
And then after these 2 years, you will return and will still have an association with the university.
Yes, this is correct. The regents were good enough to create a special position for me, which carries the title of Professor of Law and Educational Consultant. There is an office in the law building in which some of my books and other paraphernalia can rest until my return.
I hear your name is on the door.
My name is on the door.
This created a little confusion earlier. Someone told me they didn't know why your name was on the door. Were you moving over into the law school 2 or 3 years ago, you see? Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Hancher, for talking with us. We all, and by this I mean the university family, the people of the community, and the people of the state, wish you the best of good fortune on your assignment to India, and offer you our sincere thanks for your contributions to SUI and to American education in general. And we're looking forward to the period 2 years from now when you'll return to the university family.
Thank you very much.